Alright, I'll start off this video by saying I have sold the F-150. After being with me for almost 10 years, it's gone. But you know what? I'm happy. I think I sold it to the right guy. You know, I made it abundantly clear that it had some transmission issues. I also made it abundantly clear that it has some frame issues, and the buyer was completely okay with that. I think I got a fair price for the truck, so I'm happy about that. And I think I told you guys this already, but it will be going down to one of the Caribbean islands after it's all fixed up, and it's going to serve a very nice retirement down there. So, again, happy that it's not getting ported out. I'm happy that it's going to have a second life, so good news there. But it has presented me with a new challenge. Now I have this snowplow and only one truck to connect it to. So it's going to have to go on the Chevy now. Now, the only issue I have with this Chevy is the front end sits quite low, so it is going to require a leveling kit. Now, you could do a lift kit, but I tow around that gooseneck trailer, and when you start getting into lift kits, you run the risk of having, you know, the gooseneck trailer coming in contact with the bed rails, which I don't want to take that chance, so we're just going to do a 2-inch leveling kit. One other thing I want to mention real quick, when it comes to leveling kits on the, I think, the year ranges from 2008 to 2018, maybe not that far, but 2008 to 2018 Chevy 1500s, you have two different styles of leveling kits. One is a top of strut spacer, which that's what I elected to go with, and I'll tell you why. The second option is the bottom of the strut spacer, which that appears like it might be a little bit less work to install. However, I have seen many pictures on Amazon where people have purchased these lower strut leveling kits, and the bolts look like they come very close, if not in contact, to the CV axle. That was a risk I did not want to take, so I bought these spacer blocks, which are going to go on top of the strut, and that is what today's video is going to be about. So let's get started. Now, granted, I do have the airbags in the back of the truck, but I think the front end sits quite low stock, so I think the first thing to do is, of course, to measure how low it sits right now, which right now it sits, if I'm looking at the center of the panel, it sits at exactly 3 feet, 36 inches, so I'm hoping to get 38 inches after this leveling kit installed. So the first thing I'm going to do, which I'm not going to do on video because I think it's going to be pretty boring, I'm going to slide the jack under the truck, I'm going to jack the front end up, I'm going to remove the front tire, and then we'll meet you back there. Alright, so I've removed the tire. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take off the brake caliper assembly, and I'm just taking off these two 18mm bolts, which I already have the lower one removed. Good idea to have a pry bar nearby. I'm going to try and take this off in one piece. Alright, now I'm going to take this caliper, I'm going to hang it on this little hook down here, so I'm not putting any pressure on the brake line. I'm going to try and find a good place to hook it to, which I think I see one. Alright, so we have the brake caliper hanging, that's out of the way. Okay, I'm also going to have to remove this tie rod end, and I know I'm going to need to remove the upper ball joint, and I believe this is the steering stabilizer back here, which I'm pretty sure that is going to need to come off too. So let me go get a variety of wrenches, and I'm going to spray this with a little penetrating oil, and we'll see if we can take this off. Alright, let's try taking off this tie rod end here, which this is a 21mm. It spun pretty freely. I just don't know if it's spinning. Therefore, I'll have to get a couple box wrenches, which it actually doesn't appear so. Throw this on the Makita. See if we can take this off. Beautiful. Okay, we'll put that to the side. And now, when taking something apart like this, it is a good idea to get into the habit of putting the hardware in chronological order, so that way when you go to reassemble everything, you just reverse the order that you took it off and you put it all back together and everything's good to go. So in order to remove this tie rod end, we're going to hit this housing right here. We're not going to hammer up on this bolt. We may have to tap on it a little bit, but we're going to give this some wax. You see it just popped up a little bit, so now that's free. We'll put that out of the way, and I'm noticing that there's a little grease fitting on here, which it appears to be in poor shape. I don't have any spare grease fitting, so that's going to need to be something that I'm going to have to throw a new one on in the future. But yeah, I think next thing we'll do is maybe we'll come over to this steering stabilizer link. We'll take that off, and then we'll take off the upper control arm. Okay, so I got this steering stabilizer link loosened up, and I put the nut back on the top, and I just hit it with a hammer a little bit to pop the bolt out down through the bottom. And there that is. This is all free. There's a little rubber part on the top, which I think I'm just going to leave there for now. A little rubber bushing type thing, so I'll just put this back together the way try that again. I'll just put this back together the way that it was. And next thing that I'm going to get ready to do is I'm going to take my jack and I'm going to put the jack underneath this and get ready to support this, because when I take off this ball joint for the upper control arm, it's going to want to drop. So we want to support that, and then we can start removing the strut. We're getting there. And hope it just drops. There she goes. So if I take this jack and lower it a little bit, this should lower. Which it does a little bit. Ow. There's my finger. Ouch. Okay, now we can start removing this strut. It looks like there's a couple bolts on the bottom, so we'll take those off, and then there's 3 nuts on the top, which that's not very interesting, so I'll do that off video, and we'll get back with you when I'm about to install the spacer on the top of this strut. Well, it would appear that I've run into some issues. As you can see, only one strut bolt is out, and that would be this bolt, the way it should look like. Well, as I was removing the second strut bolt, and yes, I did apply PB blaster to it, the nut head, or well, the bolt head broke off. So now I need to try and track down another one of these and figure out how to get this off safely. Now, unfortunately, AutoZone can't get me this part, so I'm going to have to get it through GM, and today is Friday, so the parts department opens up at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Hopefully they have these on the shelf. Otherwise, I may be without a truck for a couple days, but anyway, can't let that stop me. I need to figure out a way to remove this nut and bolt in order to continue removing the strut. So I may just take an angle grinder and try cutting that off. I've already attempted to apply heat to this nut here. Why is this out of focus? There we go. I already attempted to apply heat to this nut here and put a pair of vice grips on this bolt here and had no luck there. So I'm thinking I may just cut the whole bolt off with an angle grinder or something like that, and hopefully it'll punch out, and we'll go from there. So let me put some more thought into it. Okay, so this is how I've been getting this bolt out of here. I have a pipe wrench that has maybe a 45-degree offset, and I put some heat on this nut, and I'm actually twisting this forward, not in reverse, so I pull it up and through. That way it is going to come up and out, you know, so it's not stuck in the lower control arm. And it's getting pretty close. It's probably out enough, actually, because you know what? Actually, you know what? If I'm able to get this out of here, I can find a different bolt and I can just reuse the nut. I think that'd be the most ideal. That way I wouldn't have to go crazy trying to find this bolt. So yeah, let me keep going here and try and get this out of here without damaging this. And I'll see if I can find another bolt. Hope for the best here. Okay, so you guys are going to love this. So I got the bolt kind of half out, Now, all the threads on this upper portion are all marred, and on the bottom they're kind of rusty. So what I'm doing now is I got this nut and bolt in the bench vise. I got a hacksaw. I'm going to cut through this. Like so. And I'm going to flip this over. And I have a good feeling that I'm going to be able to save the nut here. So I'm going to want this to come up, so I'm going to spin it to the right. Put my pipe wrench back on here. Spin this to the right. Or you know what? Actually, I'm spinning this the wrong way. I'm going to spin this to the left. And this should come right up. Oh, yeah. Beautiful. Okay, that makes me feel better. Alright, so good deal. We were able to save this bolt, so that saves me probably 10 bucks right there, and I'm sure that I'm going to be able to find a bolt that will work for this. Alright, time now is 7:20 on a Friday, and Ace Hardware is open until 8 o'clock, so I think I'm going to try there first, and if I strike out there, and we have Home Depot, which they're open until 10. However, I spoke with Jack from Ace Hardware, and he assured me that they do, in fact, have an extensive collection of nuts and hardware, so I'm counting on you, Jack. Alright, although I didn't see my boy Alex, I'm pretty sure that they had what I needed. So this one is a full thread bolt. That's the one that was on the truck. And judging from where, almost looks like they put some anti-seize on there, I'm pretty sure that's where it originally sat, the nut sat. So I grabbed 3 different size bolts. I'm not sure which one I'm going to use. Spend like $8.50 on hardware, but I'd rather spend an extra $1 or $2 now and ensure that I have what I need, as opposed to taking another trip back here. And I bought 2 of each in case this happens on the other side. So I think I'm all set. I'm gonna put the camera away and we'll get back to the house, and guess what? I'm in me mama's car. Vroom vroom. Alright, it's getting dark out, so I'm really not going to be able to film too much more, but I could at least show you how this all goes together and how this works. So this is your strut. This is what I just removed. The bottom of the strut, that's where I was having the issue with that nut, but we got that all squared away, hopefully. But anyway, to take this out the rest of the way, there were just 3 nuts that I had to take off. And I will say, in the Chevy, I had plenty of room to get up in the engine compartment, take off these nuts. On my old F-150, it was real PIA to remove the nuts for the top of the strut. So basically what this leveling kit is, this is a leveling kit, and it's basically a machined piece of aluminum. And this is, according to the manufacturer, going to give me 2 inches of lift in the front. This is not actually 2 inches. It's not a 1-to-1 ratio, so just be aware of that. And how this works is this simply is going to go on the top of the strut like this. There is a small issue. The original strut bolts are too long. They're sticking out up above the flat surface of the spacer block. So what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to twist these nuts on here and cut off a little bit of these bolts. And then when I back the nuts off, that should correct the threads a little bit. But basically this is going to sit like this after I cut the tips of these original bolts on. Then this will get bolted on like so. But before I even bolt that on there, there's a new set of bolts that need to be threaded in here. Tell me I can't get this out now. There we go. But yes. So you see how there's threadings in here. So what's going to happen, I have 3 new bolts, and what's going to happen, these are going to thread in here, and they're going to stick out like this, and these are going to be basically the new mounting bolts for the top of the strut. So hopefully that's pretty self-explanatory. So I'll see how far I get on this side, and I'm going to knock out the other side, and then I'll get back with you likely sometime tomorrow when I have it all finished. And we'll take a measurement and see how she looks. And as for reassembly, it's pretty simple. You just reinstall it the way you took it out in the opposite direction. Alright, I said I wasn't going to film anymore, but I am going to film a little bit more of this. So I finished up the driver's side. I'm working on the passenger side right now. Driver's side took me quite some time, 4 or 5 hours. Passenger side, I'm probably going to finish it up in 2.5 to 3 hours, so a little bit quicker because I know what I'm doing now. And I want to make sure, you know, I do this properly, torque everything down and whatever. So yeah, so this is the leveling kit, or the strut spacer, whatever you want to call it. And as you can see, I've already put in the 3 Allen head bolts that come with this kit. Also, it's important that you do want to Loctite these down, because this is going to be the new top of your strut. So if you ever need to remove your strut, you're going to unbolt this, and as I mentioned earlier in the video, you have easy access from your engine compartment. But if you don't Loctite these and tighten these down properly, if you go to remove the strut in the future, it is possible that these will spin out with your nut, and then you're gonna have some big problems. So yeah, definitely make sure you Loctite them. I also put some Loctite, put some on there, but it came off a little bit. Make sure you put some Loctite on your strut bolts, your original strut bolts. And I have cut off the tips of these strut bolts as I did on the other one. Here's one of the tips. And again, you just want to cut them off enough so that when you put this strut spacer on top, none of these original strut bolts are sticking out past your spacer. So, and they also include some hardware. So first, flat washer, lock washer. You put these nuts down in here, and then you bolt this thing down, and then we'll put it in the truck. See how she looks. Alright, so I'm going to show you how to put this strut back in here. Now, this is probably the most challenging part about this job, but I'm going to show you what I found to be the easiest way to do this. So, what makes this job so challenging is bolting on the lower strut bolts. And the reason it's so challenging is because obviously, you know, the bolts run parallel to the strut, and this is perpendicular, or this plane is perpendicular to the strut. It's on a 90-degree angle. Now, what becomes challenging is the A-arm, the lower A-arm, because, you know, it's down right now. It's not completely flush with this lower strut mount. If anything, it's pointing out a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the strut, I'm going to feed it up into the upper control arm, but I'm not going to put it into its little holder just yet. What we're going to do, we're just going to kind of have it sit right here. We're going to have the lower part of the strut rest on this lower control arm, and we're going to start these bolts. And after we get it started, you know, you bring them, you tighten them up a little bit, but then we're going to lower this jack some. We're going to push down on the strut and the lower control arm, and then we're going to force this jack up into, or no, we're going to force this strut up into its little cradle there. I think that's the easiest way to do it. If you try and bolt the top of the strut first, you're almost never going to be able to really get these bolts threaded on here properly, and it's going to be a real tough job. So let's give this a try here. See, that's what you're going to want to do right there. Make sure you guys can see that. So you see the top of the strut is outside of its upper cradle. We just kind of want to get this lined up a bit here. Another thing that you may have to do is you may have to take these nuts off in order to get the bolts up through the mounting portion of the strut. And then after you take these nuts off, then you can, you know, thread them on the bolts, and as you tighten up the bolt, these will eventually come back down and clamp on. So see if we have any luck getting this on here without taking these nuts off. Alright, so I got these lower strut bolts and nuts in, and it is a little bit of a pain, and you know, I still think this is the easiest way to do it. So now we need to get the upper portion of the strut into its cradle. So what you're going to do is you're going to put a little bit of down pressure on this lower control arm, and you're going to push this in, which may require a little bit of force. Like that. But watch your fingers, of course. Alright, I got it started. Now I should be able to just push this in here. Again, watch your fingers, because it'll probably pop once it gets in there. Yeah, like that. Alright, so it's in the cradle where it needs to be. So now I'm going to take this jack, put a little bit of upward pressure on the lower control arm, and that'll force this strut right into place. So now I'm going to go back into the engine compartment. I'll tighten down these bolts for the upper portion of the strut, and then I'll make sure I torque down these lower strut bolts. And that's probably the hardest part about this job right there. Now there are a few more small challenges, but a ratchet strap will help us out a lot here. So this is one of the most undervalued tools when it comes to mechanics, in my opinion. A ratchet strap, pretty invaluable. Alright, so here's your next trick. Getting this upper ball joint in after you put in a leveling kit can be tricky depending on how much of a leveling kit you get. If you get a 3-inch, it's going to be a lot more difficult than an 1.5 inch. So if you were to try and push this down and line this up, I tried yesterday. I mean, I don't have the biggest muscles in the world. I wasn't able to do it. So a good little trick, which I haven't seen anybody else do, is use a good old ratchet strap. So what you do, you get this lined up, start cranking down on this. And again, this ratchet strap is such a great tool for doing stuff like this. It should just go right in here. Just want to be careful with your ABS line. Okay, I'm gonna get that started now. I think I got the wrong one. Yes, I do. Alright, and now I can tighten down this upper ball joint nut the rest of the way, and then we can move on to, I think the next thing is the steering stabilizer link. And now we started off with 3 feet 36 inches. Let's see where we're at now. 38.5, so we gained 2.5 inches, which is a little bit more than what I wanted, but I'm sure, you know, because we decompress the suspension, if we give this a little bit of time, it'll probably sink down another 1/4 inch further. So I'm happy with it. Looks great. No complaints.